Ferrari doesn't need to beat Mercedes in Miami. They need to lose by the perfect amount, because if they fall just under 4% behind, they unlock extra engine upgrades worth up to 30 horsepower handed to them by the FIA. One race, one measurement, one number that decides if Ferrari stays second or becomes a championship threat overnight. And here's the part no one is saying out loud. Miami isn't just about who is fastest, it's about who controls the gap before the rules turn that gap into power. It sounds simple at first. Ferrari is fast but not fast enough, always close, always there but still chasing Mercedes. And that's exactly where this story begins, because in most seasons being second best is a problem. In this season, it might be the perfect position because of one rule, ADUO. A rule that quietly rewards teams that are just behind the leader, not too far, not too close, right in that narrow window. Think of it like running a race where the organizers give extra energy drinks, but only to the runners who are slightly behind first place. Not the winner, not the last place, only the ones in that exact gap. That's Ferrari right now. Some data suggests they are around 2% behind Mercedes. Other reports push them right up to 4%, and that tiny difference is everything, because at 2%, Ferrari gets one extra engine upgrade. At 4%, they are right on the edge of getting even more. More development, more power, more chances to close the gap completely. And in real terms, that could mean gaining something like 20 to 30 horsepower over time. That's not a small step. That's the difference between fighting for podiums and fighting for wins. But here's where the situation becomes uncomfortable. That percentage is not based on what we see on television. It's not just lap times. It's calculated using detailed data collected directly by the FIA during race conditions, which means Ferrari is not just racing. They are being measured. Every straight, every acceleration, every deployment of energy, all of it feeds into one number, and that number decides their future. But here's the part that changes everything. Ferrari doesn't just need to be fast, they need to be measured in the right place. Too close to Mercedes, and they lose the advantage. Too far behind, and the situation changes completely. So they are balancing on a knife's edge, pushing but not too much, closing the gap but not completely. And all of this leads to one moment, Miami, because this is the first time the FIA will collect real complete data under the new conditions. The first real calculation, the first real answer. And once that number is set, everything that comes after is built on it. So this is no longer just about performance. It's about positioning, because in Miami, Ferrari is not just chasing Mercedes, they are chasing the perfect gap. But here's where the story takes a turn most people didn't expect, because Ferrari is not the only one who understands this rule. Mercedes does too, and that changes everything, because if Ferrari is trying to position themselves close to that 4% gap, Mercedes is trying to keep them away from it. Now think about how strange that is. Two teams not just racing for victory, but fighting over a number that no one can see, because the FIA will calculate that percentage using real data from Miami. Engine output, energy deployment, performance under race conditions. God. And here's the key detail. That data only reflects what the teams choose to show. So now the question becomes uncomfortable. What if Mercedes doesn't show everything? What if they hold back music just enough to make the gap look smaller? Not enough to lose the race, not enough to raise suspicion, but enough to keep Ferrari closer to 2% instead of 4%. Because if Ferrari stays closer to 2%, they only get one extra upgrade. Less power, less recovery, less threat. And suddenly, Miami becomes more than a race. It becomes a strategy battle hidden inside the data. Ferrari wants that gap to look bigger. Mercedes wants it to look smaller. And both are operating within the rules. That's what makes it so powerful and so difficult to detect, because from the outside, everything looks normal. Cars on track, music drivers pushing, lap times dropping. But underneath that, there's another race happening, a silent one. Do you deploy full power on the straight, or do you hold something back? Do you chase the fastest lap or control the data? Do you win today or protect your advantage for the rest of the season? And this is where Formula One becomes something else entirely. Not just speed, not just skill, but calculation, because once Miami ends and the FIA processes that data, the result becomes official. And then after Monaco, it's locked in. No adjustments, no second chances. That percentage decides how many development opportunities Ferrari gets, and more importantly, how much power they can gain later in the season, because those upgrades are expected to arrive between Canada and Austria, bringing potentially up to 25 extra horsepower. And that's when the real shift could happen. Not in Miami, but because of Miami. So now, everything we are watching has two layers, the visible race and the invisible calculation behind it. And the teams know whichever one they control better controls what happens next. Music. But while this invisible battle is happening, Ferrari is preparing something you will see immediately, a complete reset of the car. Not a small upgrade, not a minor tweak, a full transformation, because everything that was supposed to arrive over multiple race weekends is now arriving all at once in Miami, and that changes the risk completely. Normally, teams introduce upgrades step by step. They test one part, understand it, then move to the next. Ferrari doesn't have that luxury anymore. They've combined everything into one single package, GAD, which means one thing. If it works, it changes everything. If it doesn't, they won't have time to fix it. And this is where the technical side becomes critical. The biggest change is something most people never notice, the floor. In modern Formula One, the floor is where most of the performance comes from. It controls how air flows under the car, creating downforce, which is basically what pushes the car into the track. More downforce means more grip. More grip means more speed through corners. GAD Ferrari redesigned this completely. The goal is simple: create more grip while reducing drag. And that second part is the key because Ferrari knows they are slightly down on engine power. So instead of only chasing more horsepower, they are making the car cut through the air more efficiently. Think of it like swimming. You can either get stronger or reduce the resistance of the water around you. Ferrari is doing both GAD Muscat, but right now, efficiency is their biggest weapon, and that alone could be worth a few tenths per lap. But here's where things get even more aggressive: the rear wing. The one everyone is talking about, the Macarena. This is not a normal DRS system. When activated, it doesn't just open slightly, it rotates. It changes its angle, dramatically reducing drag in a much more extreme than any other car on the grid. And the result is clear. More straight-line speed, up to 10 kilometers per hour faster in certain sections of the track. That's a massive advantage, but it comes with a serious problem: stability. The first version of the system made the car unpredictable under braking. The rear would lose stability and the driver would lose confidence. So Ferrari went back and redesigned it. They added a counterbalance system, made it lighter, more controlled. Now, on paper it works, but Miami is not a simulation. It's heat, pressure, real racing conditions, and no one truly knows how the system will behave when everything is on the line. Because if it works perfectly, Ferrari could become the fastest car on the straights. But if it fails, the entire balance of the car collapses, and that leads to the next problem, because when the rear of the car changes that much, the front has to adapt. So Ferrari also redesigned the front wing, not to add speed, but to keep the car stable when the rear wing transforms at high speed. It's like trying to run while someone suddenly shifts your weight from your back to your front. If you're not prepared, you lose control, and Ferrari knows this. That's why every part of this package is connected. The floor affects grip, the rear wing affects speed, the front wing affects balance. But there's one more layer that most people never see: the software. GAD Ferrari has completely reworked how the car manages electrical energy. When to deploy music it, how to store it, how to avoid losing power at the worst possible moment. Because before Miami, one of their biggest weaknesses was inconsistency. The car would suddenly lose electrical boost in critical moments, something known as super clipping. Now, the system is designed to prevent that, to keep power delivery smooth, predictable, reliable. And that changes how the drivers push the car because confidence is everything. If the driver trusts the car, they push harder. If they don't, they lose time. And all of this is happening at once. New floor, new wing, new balance, new energy system, all introduced in a single weekend with almost no real testing because Miami is a sprint format. One practice session. That's it. No time to experiment, no time to fix mistakes. Everything has to work immediately, and that's what makes this moment so dangerous, because Ferrari is not just upgrading the car. They are betting everything on getting it right instantly, and if they do, they don't just improve. They force the entire grid to react, and this is where everything starts to collide all at once. Because when you bring this many changes together, you don't just gain performance. You create pressure, extreme pressure on the engineers, on the drivers, on every decision made in real time, because Miami is not a forgiving circuit. The walls after 10 laps, after 20, when the car starts to feel different, when the grip fades, when the balance shifts. Because that's where races are actually decided, not in the perfect lap, but in the laps where everything starts to fall apart. And this is where Mercedes has been almost untouchable: consistency, control, Gadar. They might not always look spectacular, but they are always there, always stable, always extracting performance when others start losing it. So, now we have a direct clash. Ferrari bringing the most aggressive upgrade package of the season. Mercedes relying on stability, experience, and precision. And right in the middle of that battle, there's something else quietly shaping the outcome: the format. Because Miami is not a normal weekend. It's a sprint, which means just one practice session before everything becomes competitive. 1 hour to understand a completely new car, 1 hour to fix problems that might take days under normal conditions. And if Ferrari gets something wrong, there's no time to recover, no time to reset. They go straight into qualifying with whatever understanding they have. And that's where the risk becomes real, because every upgrade they've brought is connected. If the floor doesn't behave as expected, the balance changes. If the balance changes, tire wear increases. If tire wear increases, strategy becomes limited. If strategy becomes limited, race pace disappears. It's a chain reaction. And once it starts, it's very difficult to stop. But here's the part that brings everything back to the beginning. While Ferrari is dealing with all this complexity, while Mercedes is managing their performance carefully, the FIA is still watching, still collecting data, still measuring that invisible gap. And once the weekend ends, that number becomes reality, not just for Miami, but for what comes next. Because after this, after Monaco, Ferrari will know exactly how much development they are allowed, exactly how much power they can gain, exactly how close they can get. And this is why Miami feels different. Because this is not just a race weekend, it's a turning point, a moment where risk, performance, strategy, and regulation all collide in the same place, and only one team will come out of it with the advantage, not just on track, but for the rest of the season.